Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Sky coming on to talk to you about a really incredible change we've just stepped into coming into July 2025. Yes, I am talking about the shift of Uranus in Taurus to Uranus in Gemini, which started on the 7th of July before it goes retrograde on the 6th of September. Check the description box below to find the dates. So we have about a 2-month primer sort of emergency lesson happening about these changes we've been going through with Uranus transiting its debilitated sign of Taurus and going into a sign it really likes of Gemini. So in this video today, you all, I'm going to talk a lot about concluding the phase of Uranus in Taurus, as I will probably come on and make an updated Uranus and Gemini video for all signs when it does go back for the final time in 2026, God willing, and I'll probably be doing also the same for Saturn and Aries. But as you guys know, we're kind of just getting like a taste of it here in the summer of 2025 in the Northern Hemisphere, obviously winter in the Southern. And then this fall, it's all going to go back. So Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, they're all retrograding back into the yin signs of Taurus and Pisces. So we're not really out of the woods yet, and there is not yet final closure. There is not yet finality on many of the long-running cycles we've had in our lives, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel here. So that is the feeling with this general period of time, is light at the end of the tunnel. On my Patreon page, I've talked in the July 2025 forecasts about navigating that, and also the sextiles between Jupiter and Cancer and Mars and Virgo. If you want to check that out, I'll link it below as there are free trials over there. So do check that out. But talking a little bit about what's different with Uranus and Gemini. So the first thing that I want to point out to you all is there is almost like a fragmenting of a center pole of energy, and some elements of it go down and some elements of it go up. So things cannot continue past this point in their current form. Certain projects will be fragmented and sort of like offshoots will emerge, and maybe like 5 or 6 different projects may come out under what used to just be one banner or one project. Also, I feel that there's a very big change in economy, budgeting, and how we're looking at both tangible and abstract resources, as Uranus in Taurus really focused this. There were a lot of businesses that cropped up under abstract ideas, abstract intentions, and obviously, yes, with Uranus and Gemini, that is going to continue in a new form, but it's going in some cases to have to be revised or polished in a way that is better communicated. So there is definitely a possibility of rebranding starting for some people here, and there is definitely also like a question of monolith, okay? If I take the larger astrology into account, with Neptune and Saturn retrograding back to Pisces, and also Uranus moving away from Taurus and into Gemini, there's a question of how do I communicate myself or my project to a larger group of people? Is there too much under one banner? Have things expanded to a point where they're unmanageable? And also, is it actually that things are unmanageable? Or could things even be like consolidated better with perhaps smarter workflows, smarter individuals working with this? As we do see kind of a realization that we can't just get stuck in the mind, right? Uranus and Taurus caused a lot of thoughts to happen. So Uranus as a planet is the higher octave of Mercury. So it deals very much with the thoughts we think, the ideas that we have, especially the inspiration to change something, the inspiration to update, upgrade, or evolve something. This is like archetypal Uranus energy. When it was in Taurus, it is debilitated in Taurus, firstly. It doesn't really care for the Scorpio-Taurus axis, even though it does quite well in Scorpio, because of the sometimes less tangible psychic element of Scorpio. It's debilitated in Taurus because it really projects these sometimes mental ideas onto the material, and it makes a very kind of like manic, almost overly vulcanized energy almost possess certain material life features. So a very clear symptom of that over the transit of Uranus and Taurus from 2018 to 2025 was inflation, right? And economic bubbles, and sometimes like manic capitalism or manic business ideas that maybe shot prices up or took certain abstract ideas and implemented them in almost an overdone, overstimulated, overly expansive way. So now we're dealing with the fallout of that. We're dealing with, overinflated assets. We're dealing with vampirism, okay? We're dealing with certain neo-feudal constructs, right? So like tax and rent regimes that take up maybe 90% of everything people have. So it's also very abstract, right? Because maybe this is not the most material way that this is happening, but Uranus in Gemini is going to start to bring a lot of obsolescence, okay? So some of these models that have cropped up during Uranus and Taurus, certain social media business models, certain also, yes, mortgage, rent, taxation models, are going to begin going obsolete, especially once we get Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So right now, here in July 2025 till September, there's a very great window here to see that coming, or to begin preparing contingencies, or to prepare ways to more realistically, or I want to say less maniacally, work with certain like economic models, or even just your own life force energy. Because at the end of the day, economy is actually about harnessing collective human energy. It's not just about material items, assets, and currency. All of these things take people power to generate. So you can definitely see in Uranus and Taurus that you had an overly gassed, overly stimulated harnessing of collective human power. And Uranus in Gemini is going to take that up a notch. If we look back at previous historical Uranus and Geminis, I mean, you see like, right, World War II and the buildup to that happening during Uranus and Taurus. And I'm definitely hoping that we can learn from that history and maybe curb and not go into something like that here. But yes, something like a world war, for example, can only be possible with a very kind of, yes, maniacal harnessing of collective human energy, whether that's through armies, whether that's through taxation, whether that's through, any kind of sort of absorption of collective resources. It is contingent on having that capacity. So that capacity to harness collective human energy is what is in question with Uranus being on the cusp of Taurus and Gemini, and how that's done, and the infrastructures, mechanics, and systems in place that facilitate that. So bringing this back down to the individual, how tied into these kinds of things are you? What is the tax obligation? What is the rent obligation? What is also the amount of time that you spend perhaps thinking about institutional issues, or how much is your life force energy kind of like flowing into these collectives, will be a big question and a big area, I think, of people power potentially during this time. As we may need to kind of strike out and do our own thing here, Uranus going into Gemini at a positive individual level gives a lot of energy for us to get our own lives together, to begin thinking differently about certain problems, long-running problems that we've had, to find really nice mental resolutions, like clicking something, having a aha moment, a light bulb moment, understanding how to work smarter rather than harder, understanding how to game certain things, okay? How to work together, how to have teamwork, and in some way not be so absorbed by these sort of like collective vampiric structures. Now, okay, this is interesting, and this is a big tone shift coming in, and I might feel this more so on the 2026 timeline, but there's actually a need to have fun, okay? There's a need for joy, there's a need for lighthearted camaraderie, and there's a need in some cases to not take certain things so seriously for some people. And at the same time, this can obviously be negative, and we can get kind of disillusioned or naive or disconnected. But Uranus and Taurus would have caused people to overthink things as well. It would have caused them to take certain projects or claims or ambitions too seriously or too materially. Okay, there could have been like over materialization of certain ideas, like I'm not happy until I see the money in the bank, or I'm not satisfied until I see the result, or really having like very kind of overstimulated manifestation, right, with Uranus and Taurus. And this would have had a lot of material manifestations that were negative too. For example, dependency on a stimulant like caffeine. Caffeine addictions are like absolutely through the roof with Uranus and Taurus, or any kind of stimulating plant energy, right? Uranus and Taurus. Also things such as, any industry that surrounds plants or plant medicine, or I suppose like pharmaceutical industries, cannabis industries, anything like that would have been very amplified here. And really, if you think of like the cost of healthcare, or if you think of, any of those things, right, they're through the roof. Landlords, also cost of rent, cost of housing, all of that is just on endless stimulant right now. And I think it's very important that some of those things remain kind of like in a decline here almost, or some of those things need to kind of come down just a little bit. And I really don't think that it is at all about bringing other people up, okay? Because I feel like destimulation may be required so that people can salvage their nervous systems. So that's another part of Uranus and Gemini, is generating a healthier nervous system, salvaging, okay? Something being salvaged, working with the previous, working with things that are not totally defunct, okay? Knowing what is defunct and what is not, going into Uranus and Gemini, repurposing things, repairing things, being a little bit more handy, okay, for some people, being a little bit more hands-on, right? Uranus in the sign of the hands, Gemini, being better with your hands. Okay, Uranus in Taurus might have made the hands not work well, and I'm speaking metaphorically here as well. So like that which we're holding in our lives, that which we are owning, or what is in our hands, what is within our power, may have been kind of all over the place. So we might have exerted a lot of power in a totally abstract area, while things that we actually had control over went into disrepair. That will change up a lot here during Uranus and Gemini, and we will have to really work within the area that we actually have control over, and we may have to take things out of a certain abstract territory if we want to feel like we have capacity, or if we want to feel like we have resolved clarity to materialize in a more strong way, or in a more realistic way. And another thing that feels very strong for me at a psychic level about Uranus changing signs, and this is more so I think about the next year or so, obviously, as it's retrograding on the cusp, it's not quite done, but it does feel like by like March 2026, April 2026, especially by about the time we hit Gemini this time next year, it does feel like a lot of things are done, and there will be a lot of shifts in like overarching goals. So like moving into different industries, there's going to be a lot of, I guess, mobility between industries. There's going to be a lot of people recognizing that, they've done their time somewhere. I'm getting that very strongly. And also that, that was their opportunity back then to make a certain like gain or to achieve something. And now they've got to think about what's next for them. Okay, so I'm over this next year, that's already going to be very prolific. And I actually feel that right now for a lot of people, but it may be kind of like vacillating also. Or people may be kind of like in an in-between phase with all of these cusp retrogrades happening. So that's something to kind of comfort yourself with during this time too, if you're kind of like in an in-between phase, or if you're not sure exactly what's next for you, but you're not exactly happy with the previous, work, business, project, or area, but like you're not exactly sure what's next either. I feel like that's something that everybody is feeling to a degree, and part of being in that liminal space is getting to know yourself, okay, as I feel that a lot of people don't know themselves coming out of Uranus and Taurus. Because Taurus is also an identity sign, and it's obviously our identity as it relates to the material surroundings, our job, our career, our earnings, our inheritances, right on the 2nd and 8th house axis. So a lot of us have really been reaching into those things to like try to understand ourselves, and maybe there's a different layer that we're going to have to get into, or we're going to have to learn like who we are despite all of these things? Or, if these things were not here, what would be the common thread and what would go quite quickly? For example, some people get quite a haughty spirit when they become very wealthy, but if you remove the wealth, that will go away very quickly too. So try to pay attention to things like that here as well. Like if I didn't have certain things, what would quickly go away? What expenses would quickly go away? What attitudes would quickly go away? And then there you basically have yourself kind of peeling back the layers of ego, or peeling back the layers of circumstantial meaning. And under that, there should be some degree of real, substantial, almost ingrained meaning. So definitely differentiating between ingrained meanings and circumstantial meanings on this cusp, and how we kind of think about it, right? Because again, we are very much in the mind here with Uranus on the cusp of Taurus and Gemini. We are very much going from the material to the mind, and from the body to the mind. And obviously, yes, how we think about things is everything. And the potential that we feel or ration about certain projects or trajectories determines so much. And it's interesting for some people to get a little bit of a wake-up call and realize that they were wrong. Okay, so a certain trajectory paid off way more than they expected, or way less than they expected, and then they have to kind of reconcile their ego through that. And then maybe this isn't about results in the bank account at all. Maybe this has nothing to do with material things, because who are you beneath all of that? And can you let that air out a little bit here and take off some of the layers of status or material considerations or innovations or incomes and outcomes. So let's kind of peel back the layers, you all. Let's kind of air things out a little bit, and let's try to destimulate, especially if you're here in Cancer season right now, 2025. There could be a bit of a flat line. There could be a bit of a coming down to real potential rather than abstract or manic potential. So I'm wishing you all luck with this. I'm going to go ahead and also welcome you all over to my Patreon page. There is a link below for free trials. I've talked about these changes in all of the July 2025 forecasts, which are available on Patreon for each sign. So if you want to go through and get sort of an all signs perspective on this general time, that will be linked below. I also do weekly forecasts, and it's a wonderful time to be here. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the like button below, comment, and share it if you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you soon. Have a great transit. Bye.